Well, thank you everyone for coming to this session. This is an adapted session, and I have my good colleague and friend, Dr. Susan Keller-Mathers here. There she is, yay. So thank you, Sue. When I did this session on Thursday, I forgot to record the first half of it. So we're recording the first half now, and then the second half we recorded. So this is Creating the Unexpected, a journey from sneakers to pacemakers, and Roger's creativity update in 3 acts. So this is going to be act kind of one and two. So Act One, in November of last year, I took to the TEDx stage in Omaha, Nebraska, and I presented the talk, Creating the Unexpected, a journey from sneakers to pacemakers. It was our intention to watch this 9-minute talk, but it's not available. Okay, so we'll tell you why in a second. Act Two, we're going to share some of the new insights about problem clarification from my new book, Solve the Real Problem. And the audiobook was released in November 2024. And Act Three, using the remaining time left, I'll answer any questions about the creativity field based on my 47 years of experience doing this work. And that's actually part two. So we did record that. So why are we not going to watch the video? Well, here is why. Just a couple of weeks ago, actually a week ago, I got this nice note from the folks at TED. They said, "Thank you for uploading Dr. Roger Firestien's talk to the media uploader. The talk has been identified as one we'd like to share with our subscribers on YouTube, as it represents a valuable and timely idea for our global audience. We're currently developing a publishing strategy to maximize its impact on the TEDx channel and better reach our millions of subscribers. That means our media team chose a specific date on which to release this talk as an editor's pick, which typically
Ooh.
results in a different purpose." Yeah, it's an editor's pick. So thank you, Sue. So watch for it on YouTube. When it comes out, it's going to come out with a bundle. And the whole title of this whole thing was about connections. So I talked about forced connections and those sorts of things. And so, but let me tell you a little bit about what a TEDx talk is like, because some of you might be interested in doing that. Some of you have already. This is actually my second TEDx talk, but it was very different than the first one. The first one was recorded during the pandemic, and essentially I sat in my living room and read a teleprompter. That didn't happen for this one. So a TEDx talk is approximately 9 to 12 minutes on a topic worth sharing. It is not interactive. It's memorized. And so it's not interactive. That was difficult for me. It's memorized. That was difficult for me. Very few slides, if any, are used. That was difficult for me. You have a coach. At first, that was difficult, but then it was great. Because you're going to coach me. What do you mean? TEDx has a special presentation format for the talk. And as I mentioned, I won't be recording. I'm not going to be recording the talk, but I'll record the rest of the session because of copyright and those sorts of things. TED gets very particular when their talk shows up in some other place. So we're going to wait till the one in Omaha comes out. You get to see it live on the TEDx stage. So the title of the talk was Creating the Unexpected, a journey from sneakers to pacemakers. We talk about making connections. We talk about the inspiration for the Nike waffle trainer. We talk about the invention of the pacemaker. We talk about how nature's inspired creativity. And we talk about force connections so people can practice force connections. All right. So there's the TEDx stage. There's all the wonderful people, and I'm about right there.
Oh, I see you.
Hello. And it was
Hello.
really a great experience. We just really came together. I was the only one from out of town. They were lovely people. We just had a great time, and so it was a really positive experience, and I nailed it. I mean, I had it memorized. So just a few things. So I just want to kind of warn you out there. There are charlatans out there that are promoting promising you a TEDx talk if you buy their program, and then you start to book engagements between $5,000 to $100,000. The worst offender is this fellow. I've redacted his name. Stay away from these folks out here. If you ever encounter one of these folks that's going to promise you a TEDx talk, if you pay them $5,000 to $7,000, it's
Wow.
yeah. And what they'll do is they'll coach you to do it, and then they'll give you a list of TEDx folks, because these are regional, and then you contact the TEDx folks. And my sponsor out there said they have folks contacting them all the time, and it's like the way it works is you're invited to do a TEDx talk. So they have a particular topic. They invite you to do it because you think it makes sense. It's not going to make you millions of dollars. It's a chance to share your passion. It's hard work and memorization. And I have to tell you guys, for every morning for 6 weeks before this, I was up rehearsing this because I'm good in the morning. And you just, yeah, right. So you just get good at it because you got to have it down cold, and you're up there There are 300 people in the audience, and you got to nail it. And so I was fortunate. They let me use about 7 slides, and you'll see them when it comes out. Okay, so there's a little bit about the TEDx talk. Yes, Dr. Cutter Mathers, you have a question.
Yes,
Yeah.
I do want to say, those of us in the field, we all have different talents. And what Dr. Roger Firestien does extremely well is make sure that what he's doing is polished
Mhm.
and clear, and he rehearses. So some of us are not as good at that repetition and that tweaking it
Oh,
until it's really good. So I just wanted to say that there's a lot of not only talent, which you can develop that, and skill, but also perseverance.
right, and hard work. I was visiting my daughter and son-in-law in Charleston, and every morning before they were up, I was up rehearsing this thing. But it was really rewarding afterwards. But it is a lot of work. Okay, so that's the whole TEDx thing. We're going to go
Ooh,
moving on. I had to throw this in. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about Solve the Real Problem. That's my latest book. It came out in September of 2023. And as I mentioned, the audio version was released in November of this year. It's on Audible and Amazon. So we begin the book with this quote from H.L. Mencken. For every complex problem, there's an answer that is clear and simple and wrong. And based on about 47 years of experience working with thousands of people and hundreds of organizations, when it comes to solving problems that are ambiguous, that are complex, that are dangerous, that need creative ideas, 99% of the time, what we think is the problem is not the problem. And Sue's nodding her head because you have experienced this through your career as well. You see, it's a symptom of the problem, or what the boss thinks is the problem, or a knee-jerk reaction to the problem, or the first impression of what you think is a problem. So the question is, why are we so bad at this? Well, we've been taught to find answers to problems, not to question the problem itself. Let me just say that again. We've been taught to find answers to problems, not to question the problem itself. Because in most of our formal education, problems have been presented to us. Right? So I believe that we're still using the same strategies we used in elementary school to solve complex, non-routine, difficult, and potentially dangerous problems. Okay, so let's test this. Dr. Keller Mathers, you're in now. So as soon as you have the answer, you don't have to put it in the chat because it's just
Okay.
you. You can just say it out loud.
All right.
As soon as you have the answer, say it. Okay. So here's the first question. Okay. First question. What is 3 plus 3?
6.
Excellent.
Go.
Okay, good. Okay, 2 more to go.
Okay.
Okay.
All
What's
right.
the capital of France?
Paris.
Good. 1 more to go. What's the name of the third planet from the sun?
I don't know. Earth.
Brilliant. 3 for 3. People get tripped up on that one. So, all right. So, so here it is. We've been taught to find answers to problems, not to question this problem itself. I gave you those problems. Those were simple problems. They were already set up, and you provided the answer. Okay. So, one of the things I want you to take from this presentation is don't trust your first instinct. So, here's an example. And here's where this came from. Remember when you were in school and you took those multiple choice tests? Yeah. And when you came to a question, you weren't quite sure what the answer was. What was the advice they gave you? Sue, what was the advice they gave you?
C.
C. Okay, C, that was one. What was the other advice?
Uh, Pick the one you think it is.
Yeah, so that's what I got. I got go with your first impression. Yeah, okay. It's usually the right answer. Okay,
Right.
go with your gut. Yeah, go
Don't
with your gut.
change the answer. That's what
Oh,
they
and
always
don't
say.
change the answer. No, 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 no.
Right.
Go with your gut. Don't change the answer. Okay. Thank you. Because that's bad advice, and it is absolutely not true. As a matter of fact, going with your first impression of what you think is correct is known as the first instinct fallacy. I found this fascinating when I found this research. It's based on the belief that you should avoid changing answers when taking tests. Your first instinct is the best. But research has shown that most test takers who change their answers change them from incorrect to correct. So when you change your answers, you actually improve your score. Isn't that extraordinary, Sue? Yeah.
But
I mean,
what's bad about it is, as a teacher, I've said that
I
prior.
know, and I've said that too as a teacher, okay? Well, here's the thing. In 33 studies from 1928 to 1984, not one of those studies found that test takers were hurt by changing their answers. So the question is, why do we trust first instincts anyway? And the answer is, it feels better, okay? You see, it feels worse to change a correct answer to an incorrect answer. Yeah, right. We remember changing the right answer to the wrong answer because it hurts us. When you discover you've made this mistake, you start beating yourself up by thinking, well, if only I had, if only I had. This happens to me in the grocery store. I'm in the grocery store line, and I'm in the line, this long line here. That line is moving faster, and so I go, oh, I'm gonna go over to that line. You go to that line, this moves faster. You go, if only I'd stayed in that line. Okay. So that's the idea behind the first instinct fallacy. So a simple way to sum up the first instinct fallacy is what we first think is the answer is not the answer. Well, this led me to come up with a new fallacy called the first problem fallacy, a natural lead, okay? And the first problem fallacy is what we first see as the problem is not the problem. What we first see as the problem is not the problem. And so the one thing I want you to take from today is what you first see as the problem is usually not the problem. Now, to solve the problem, we devote a lot of time to this whole concept of not what's of the first instinct fallacy. We have research behind it. We talk about why executives are pretty lousy at finding problems because they haven't been taught to do that. But the single focus of this book is how to find the real problem in any situation you might encounter, personal or professional. So we're focusing on finding the real problem because it doesn't make any sense to generate ideas for solving the wrong problem. Right. That's why we spend so much time in creative problem solving, doing problem clarification. It's worth it. So the second half of this book, the middle of this book, I'll say, are a series of interviews. And so I interviewed people for Solve the Real Problem from medicine, aviation, engineering, business, government, the military, education, transportation, negotiation, advertising, agriculture, manufacturing, and everyday life. And I asked them one question. I said, can you tell me a story from your life or where you work when you discovered the problem you were trying to solve was not the problem at all? Can you tell me a story from your life or your work when you discovered the problem you were trying to solve was not the problem at all? And they were wonderfully generous with their time and all had all these wonderful stories. And so when I looked at all of these responses and analyzed the themes, I found they settled into four mindsets. And a mindset is a particular way of thinking. And the four mindsets were the key to finding the real problem. And here they are. Challenge your assumptions, talk about that. Get an outside perspective. As you know, oftentimes that you're too close to the problem, so get an outside perspective. See the big picture, and the opposite of seeing the big picture is to look for all the details. So challenge your assumptions, get an outside perspective, see the big picture, look for all the details. And we have a chapter devoted to each one of these with stories and examples from people in real life. We also talk about the climate for creativity in organizations. And my dear friend, Dr. Larry Kiley, has this to say about innovation. You can't force innovation, but you can free it. And so how do you free it? Well, here's one way. You make the air right. Make the air right. So what does that mean? All right. So the wonderful book, The Lives of the Cell, Lives of a Cell, written by the biologist Lewis Thomas and an author, wonderful, wonderful book, talks about discovery. And Dr. Thomas says this, he says, discovery cannot be prearranged in any precise way. The minds cannot be lined up in tidy rows and given directions from printed sheets. You cannot get it done by instructing each mind to make this or that piece for central committees to fit with the pieces made by the other instructed minds. It does not work this way. What it needs is for the air to be made right. He uses this analogy. He said, if you want a bee to make honey, you don't issue protocols on solar navigation or carbohydrate chemistry. You put them together with other bees and you do what you can to arrange the general environment around the hive. If the air is right, the science will come in its own season, just like pure honey. So if you want your people to be creative, if you want the people in your organization to look for problems to solve, make the air right. So what's one thing you can do to make the air right? Well, solve the real problem. How do you do that? First, pause. Don't accept your initial impression of the problem as the real problem, the first instinct fallacy. Ask creative questions. Ask how to, how might, what might be all the ways to. The problem you see is the problem you solve. So the best way to do that is to see lots of problems that might be possible to solve. So come up with a variety of creative questions. Choose the creative question that best defines your problem and then generate ideas to solve it. So pause, ask, choose. Moving on. All right. And so this is where we actually started the second recording. So this is part one. Dr. Keller Mathers, thank you for being here. Any questions or comments?
It's fabulous.
Thanks.
I
Thanks.
have not seen this before. So,
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
I know the book and the
Yeah.
book is great, but I love the way this came together. Thank you.
Thank you, dear friend. So, and
It's
thank you.
movingly
Moving
wonderful.
on. All right. Thank you, everyone. Okay. All right. Let me stop the recording here. All right. So we've talked about, so those of you that are watching this now, I forgot to record the first part, so I'm going to record the questions afterwards. So now what's going to happen is let's take a look at what questions do you have, also about the TEDx experience, questions you might have about Solve the Real Problem. It's available on Audible and it's also on Amazon. And just any questions you have about the business. We have about 8 minutes to do this. So let's just open your mics and talk to me about that. And if you're not comfortable with mics, I have the chat up here. So what questions you want to ask me about my experience of being in the business for 47 years? So you got me. What do you want to know? I'll give you my best shot.
Well, you were my teacher, so I pretty much know the whole spiel. You know what I mean? And
Yes,
then some.
Eugene, I was your teacher. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much know what you've done. So you pretty much, I know your background, everything you've done. So I don't
You
have
don't
any
have any.
questions.
Okay, well, that's great. Then we'll start out with no questions. All right. Other questions you have about the business, about what we see is going on right now? What do you got?
Roger, I've got one for you.
Yeah.
There's a lot of discussion around how to maintain openness in climates that are maybe closing down a little bit.
Yeah.
And there's just so much need for openness. And so I've been leaning into creating, like you said, that air, that's those safe spaces, holding those spaces. Have you found anything that has been working a little bit better in the last, month or so than previously to help keep groups in a safe space and contributing everything that they have to contribute?
Yeah. I won't go to the last month or so because I haven't been doing a lot in the last month. I've been doing a few other things, but I will go to places where it's been challenging and that would be labor negotiation. So a number of years ago, I was working with a coal company, all right, and I was doing a creative problem solving session with them. And they said, we're in the process of negotiating right now, and we're going to get a strike in about 3 days if we don't solve this. So what they had me do, they said, you're the creativity guy, you're here. Can we get you to come for an afternoon to talk to this labor management group? So we got in a room and we just did two things, guys. We just had them gather some data about the situation without judging it while it's being facilitated, and then just list all the creative questions that they had about that. How to, how might, how to, how might, how to, might. And then from there they went, well, I said, can you do that? They said, yeah, can we do that? Yeah, can you do that? And it was over. All right. And so I think just by listing creative questions are so powerful because when you get them out there, you feel the energy change in the room. And so a lot of the things that are going around fear and all those sorts of things. Well, if you get it out, Jen, I think that's the place to start. All right. So, that's what I would recommend right now. Give it a try. Let me know how it works. Does that seem to make sense for you?
Yeah,
You're nodding.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
good.
I think, managing that in a neutral, non-judgmental space is the challenge for the facilitator.
Oh, and that's the thing with the facilitator. The whole thing is how you show up makes the whole difference in the world. Okay. When you walk in that room, it's how you show up because they're going to pattern after you. And I've kind of I've gone through the stages of being kind of cocky or kind of a little sarcastic from time to time. I don't do that anymore. It's just like you come in and you're pure, just pure. So yeah. Kathy, you got a question?
Oh, Kathy, you got one. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to, but
No, go ahead.
I
We'll go
did
to
have a
Kathy.
question. I'll wait till after.
Okay, then we'll go to Jean. Yeah, Kathy.
Oh, okay, thank you. So actually, kind of along that same line, I'm thinking about you've worked with so many different industries,
Yeah.
and I'm wondering, since to me it feels like different industries attract kind of similar personalities, and I'm wondering what you have found to be the more difficult industries to work with problem solving.
I love that. Well, let me At first, it was engineers. um, but here's the thing about engineers, and my son-in-law is an engineer. Here's the thing about engineers. When you give them the data, it's like, oh, okay. Because you walk in with this creativity stuff, and they will like, and we're doing engineer, we're doing hard science. Oh, okay, I got it. All right. Um, I also did a lot of work with atmospheric scientists and stuff like that, the real hard scientist guys. The same thing. When you came in, when you give them the data, they go like, okay, this creativity stuff works. And then the other thing is, have them work on real stuff. If they're solving real problems, as you all know, and if they're solving real problems and making progress on real problems, you've got them. So, and the other thing is, don't short circuit the warm up. Don't short circuit the time you spend getting them ready to get more creative. And the little, how to improve a bathtub, how to get a hippopotamus out of a bathtub, those sorts of fun, silly things like that. But you sanction the time. You say, look, guys, for 6 minutes, we're going to not judge. We're just going to get all the ideas out here, and we're going to use this to warm up. And you use the analogy of warming up for physical activity. That warm up, they'll tolerate it for 5 or 6 minutes. And then they'll see and then you make the comparison. You say, look, what do you think would have happened if we wouldn't have done this warm up and went in right into solving the problem like you usually do, right? And you get these answers like, well, it wouldn't be as creative, we wouldn't be involved. So two things is, protect with tough groups, get the data out there. Here's why it works. Second, make sure they're warmed up. Third, work on real stuff. And focus first on identifying what the real problem is. That's just because so crucial. And when we do our breakthrough labs, we spend a lot of time focusing on what the real problem is. And when we got the real problem, generating the ideas is pretty easy. So does that help, Kathy?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very
Good.
much.
Yeah. Gene, you had a question?
And that's, what you said, in addition is gather your data, and I get it. You speak the lingo of what, engineers do, what plumbers do, vice versa. I've done a couple of facilitations before and they've worked out of gotten that magic out of the group. But my question was this, like we were all faced with this huge problem and that was COVID, right? So I don't know if you were ever asked this question before, but being in that was like big challenges for us here in the States, right? We lost relatives. We lost. There was just a lot of losses. Put it that way. So I wanted to know, with your expertise, because I know what I did actually. You know what I mean? Because I've run a business as well. One of it has it's on the screen. It's displayed here. But what did you initially do in your field to actually keep your business, add logs to the fire, to keep it running? Like, were you able to be active still? Like, how did you divert and go around what we
Love
were
that
losing?
question. I love that
You know what I'm
question.
saying? Like
I
I'm
know
just always
exactly what you're
wanted to
saying.
know. You
Yeah.
know what I
So,
mean?
well, we had two things. We had the amazing Dr. David Yates, who runs these conferences and did all of the virtual stuff. We went virtual, right? And so we did virtual. And so here's an interesting story, and I'll end because it's 1 o'clock. I'll end with this question, with this comment. Dr. Larry Kiley, who I quoted in there, a dear friend, does a lot of work with leadership training, does a lot of work with, she's doing work now on moral injury when people are having to deal with that stuff that's going on, particularly in healthcare. And she does courses all over the world. Okay. She, at first, like all of us, business went away, but then it came back. But then she did everything virtually. As a matter of fact, Larry's business increased significantly toward the end of COVID because she was able to do more work in the week. She wasn't traveling to all these other places. Now she very seldom travels at all. So when we made that shift and when the world came around, we did it virtually, just like what we did here. This is a precise example. Okay. Our classes are now virtual classes in most of the cases. So all right, so folks, thank you. It's 1 o'clock. I really thank you, Rustin. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate you being with me. Thank you so much. Oh, hey, here's my website. Let me just go this. There's a website. Got a lot of free resources, all that kind of stuff there. Drop over, send me an email, and so thank you so much. It's love doing this. Love seeing your faces, and have a great rest of the conference. Thanks. Bye, everybody. Okay. And say hi to Charlie. I'll see you later.